Hello and welcome to SharpHR Career Corner with Karen Sharp Price. This podcast will inform and inspire you in your quest to find the right career path. If you're just starting out, looking to make a change in your field, or transitioning into a new career, then this podcast is for you. We will be sharing tips and providing resources on topics such as writing resumes, interviewing, using LinkedIn, and networking. We will take a look at different careers, companies, and opportunities. You will hear success stories from professionals in all career paths, and so much more. You will leave this podcast with 3 key takeaways that you can easily put into practice. Enjoy!
Welcome to SharpHR Career Corner. I'm Karen Sharp Price. Today we're going to talk to Christine Smith, who lives in Albany, New York. Hi, Christine. Thanks for joining us on SharpHR Career Corner.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks for having me.
You do live in the Albany area, right?
I'm in Clifton Park, yes.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I had the right
Not
location.
Too far, yeah.
So I really enjoy listening to people's career story because it's never a straight line, it's zigzags. And I think the zigzag is the story, is what's interesting about everybody's story. So back when you graduated with a marketing concentration. When you got out of college, your first career job was advertising marketing, and you did that for a couple of years. What was it about that job that really interested you the most at that point?
So my school journey in itself is very interesting because I was actually trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I was 17, 18 years old based on the skills that I had and what I was actually really good at. So I was actually really good at science. I was actually really good at math. So no one offered engineering to me, which I would have actually done really well at, but that's besides the point. So I was interested in forensics. I actually interviewed an FBI agent. I took a tour to the forensics lab in Albany. And after, kind of feeling out if this would be a job for me, I was like, I don't really want to stare at a rug and pick fibers off all day long. Like, that sounds really boring and not interesting. And I explored the option of being a detective, and I was concerned that being a cop would change me emotionally as a person. You just come across something, and especially as a detective, there might be things that you find that not the typical person is going to see. And I'm like, I don't know how I would deal with that. So I was like, okay, what else am I good at? I'm very creative. I'm really good at art at the time, drawing, painting, all those things. I'm like, okay, what kind of options are there for that? Interior design came up. Ironically, at that time, I wanted nothing to do with computers. So this is back in 2006, when I was trying to figure out which college I wanted to go to. I wanted nothing to do with computers. I did not like technology, which I find hilarious. And the colleges that I applied to, I got into all of them, but some of them didn't accept my art portfolio, which didn't help. And then some were very expensive. Like, I was already thinking at 18 years old, I'm like, I didn't want a lot of student debt. And this was a while ago, right? Student debt is crazy now.
Yes.
But it was crazy then too. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to graduate with a lot of student debt. I got into a community college pretty much free and clear. So I was like, well, I'll just start there. They didn't really have the program that I needed. And I had taken a year of college already in high school. So I was already ahead. So I got to take a lot of electives. And because they didn't have an interior design program, I had to go with something that was somewhat close, and it was graphics. I ended up really liking graphics. It allowed for this creative side of me to come out. I also got to take marketing and sales courses, which still allow for the creative side and the socialization side, which is something that I really need. And at 18, I still understood that I really need to be around people on a regular basis. So when I got offered my first big girl job, working for a very small direct mail publication, I took it because I'm like, wow, this is right within my degree. I'm going to be able to design ads for clients. I'm going to be able to sell to clients. I'm going to be able to go meet with them face to face, and then go back and design things and then say, hey, is this approved or not? And then it goes into our publication.
Wow. So I have to say, step back a few. At 17, you were very enlightened because
Yeah.
I have those conversations with college students now, sophomore through senior year, and a lot of them have no idea what they want to do, or they have a few ideas, which, I can work with any of those, but for somebody, I don't come across somebody at that age who not knows what they want to do, but knows what their skill sets are and
Mhm.
looks at those skill sets and then tries to match them with jobs out there. Like you were ahead of your time in that
Yeah,
process.
it's crazy. I don't know where that came from. And I wish I had had more guidance, because there's a lot of jobs I didn't even have the option to explore because no one mentioned it to me. Like
Mm.
my like the conversation that I had with the school was like, well, you can be a teacher. And I'm like, I don't want to be a teacher.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to do that. I did sub, I
Yeah.
did do it, here and there as like a side thing, but that wasn't what I wanted to do, as a career. And I was also trying to think, okay, what isn't going to go away? What is going to lead to decent money? What am I going to be happy with? Why I was thinking about all this stuff at 18, I don't know.
Really?
I don't know if it was like I was in a really bad car accident at 17. So I don't know if that kind of changed my life perspective a little bit.
Yeah.
But it definitely, I still use my degree every single day. And I don't think there's many people that can say that.
No, not at all. So, okay, so you did the marketing and advertising. You pivoted into the automobile industry. What were you doing for there? What was your career journey on that one?
So I left working for an SEO company, and because there was no further growth. So like you, I'm constantly like bored.
Yeah.
I need to be doing different things all the time. And so I started working for a Toyota dealership, and I was hired just in sales. So I was just on the floor. And I remember it was so brutal because, we're all fighting for clients, and I hated just kind of standing around waiting for someone to show up. It just sucked. And a couple months in, the general sales manager at the time gave me and one other person the internet department, which at the time, maybe we sold 10 cars a month if we were lucky off of internet clients. So this is back in 2012 when internet purchasing of major things wasn't really that big yet.
And comfortable.
And yeah, it was, Carvana wasn't really a big thing if it even existed yet. It wasn't really like that prominent, CarMax, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I started really taking it, this is still super new to me, but I'm very organized. I'm, very creative, and I'm always trying to figure out, well, how do I redo something that's kind of stale? And so the other person that was working with me, within a couple months, he didn't want to do it anymore because he's like, I don't like being tied to my desk. And I'm like, I just feel like I had so much more freedom because I wasn't having to talk to someone who wasn't even interested. Leads that were coming in, the percentage of more people that were interested, there were still people that weren't, right? But
Yeah.
It was just different. It was just easier to navigate. So I actually rebuilt the internet department at the dealership I worked at in a period of 3.5 months from when I started working in that position. We went from selling 10 cars a month to 25. And then I actually brought somebody else on because internet never sleeps, and I never did. Because I was very obsessed with any lead that came in. I would answer at 10 o'clock at night because there's other Toyota dealerships within the area. So I'm like, if I respond the fastest, I'm more likely to get the sale. And if I'm responding as, oh, do you want to come, test drive? I didn't care if people want to come and test drive. You're a loyal Toyota customer. You want to buy another Camry? Okay, well, let me give you prices. What have you gotten from other dealerships? How can I beat them? I built up a sales list of like all of our cars, how to price them competitively. I sent ghost leads to other dealerships to see what they were pricing their cars at to make sure I was competitive and in line. I set up all the content, drip campaigns, all of our CRM, like how everything was layered out. So there would be stuff that would go out on a regular basis if someone didn't purchase. I redid all of those things, and then I would do campaigns as I would go. If I hadn't heard from people in a while, I would send them out goofy poems about the Toyota specials or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
And it was really great. Like I was the top salesperson after that. January of 2013, I was the top salesperson for how long I stayed in that position. And then they hired, it was so weird how everything happened after that, but they decided to go the BDC route, which is pretty normal for dealerships, but that dealership wasn't really getting enough volume of leads for that really to be appropriate. They didn't offer me that position, even though I had been running and built the internet department, but okay. And I was training some of the other dealerships on how to manage their CRM properly. So I told the GM at the time, which we had gotten new ones all the time, that I want the F&I position or I'm leaving. And that's how I got the F&I position.
Sometimes you just have to ask.
Yep. So I trained for that. And it was very interesting because I was working, I've been in predominantly male industries most of my career, and going into a management position where some men don't respect women in management was very hard because I had very little support when I was back there.
Wow. And you were young too. So younger female in that kind of industry. Yeah. You gotta be on top of your game at all times.
Yep.
So during this, I think during this whole time, marketing, sales, automobile industry, you were also, you were, I guess, still creative and interested in other things. So you were really at the same time doing executive consulting for Rodan and Fields. Was that about the same time that you couldn't just do the one job? You were also
no, I've never been that way. And even there's, people see my resume or what's on, LinkedIn or whatever. I'm like, that's not even close to what actually has happened. I've bartended, I did stand up for a while. I was in the restaurant business for a good chunk of my early career and through college. And then just side things here and there that, I got paid to do. And Rodan and Fields, so they're a multi-level marketing company. They've been around for a number of years. It's a skincare line. And it was something I was interested in. It was a friend of a friend had introduced me, and I was like, oh, I could do this and it could be my side gig, but it wasn't something I was ever passionate about. Okay. So I never really did that much with it. I was with them for a while, but I got discounts on skincare products and I still use them, but it wasn't a full passion of mine to really turn it into a true business, which is, people make fun of MLMs or they call them pyramid schemes or whatever. Some of them are, but some of them are actually legitimate. And just like any other business, you have to actually do things. You have to talk to people. You have to, just because you don't have a physical storefront doesn't mean you're not out there. And I think there's a huge gap of misconception of actually how to operate a business, because that training doesn't really happen. Right. And I'm not saying that, they were doing that necessarily, but it just wasn't a passion. So I didn't pursue it as a true CEO like I should have.
So how many things have you done at one time, do you think, looking back, of all the things that you were doing?
I would say typically I juggle 3 to 4 things at a time.
Wow. Okay. So we're sort of the same.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things I definitely have problems saying no. That's part of the problem. Yeah. But I have, over the years, I've really gained all of these different skills. And a lot of them are, so if you look at a Venn diagram with the circles and there's the overlap, a lot of them have that. Yeah. So I'm yeah, sure, I can help you with that. And, until I stop getting questions about it, why would I stop doing it? And especially if it's not taking me a ton of time or it's a couple hours a week, to me, I'm oh, that's worth it. And especially if I'm charging for something, I'm oh, that's 100% worth it. Right. And everyththing has always led me to being in the marketing field. I have never not stepped out of that completely.
Well, marketing does touch pretty much everything that you do, whether you're, working at Target, you're still marketing yourself. You're still trying to be the best employee. So if you own your own business, marketing is fundamental right now. Right. So yeah, marketing is huge. So out of college, about 6 years, you pivoted into finance. What made you think about becoming a financial advisor?
So I was trying to leave the car business for a while. That's where it started. And, the option of obviously going to another dealership came up. I had some dealerships that would have taken me in a heartbeat, even still, they will take me in a heartbeat if I really wanted to go back. But I was I don't think it's going to be different. I don't think it's going to be any different working for another owner, dealership, whatever. So I was I'm trying to get out. It was a very toxic work environment. I was working crazy hours. I barely had time off at that point. So I could say 80 hours was normal. 7 days a week, even though we weren't open on Sundays. I had to go in on Sunday because of the fact I had no help and I was doing 2.5 people's jobs. So I'm I can't do this anymore. And I wanted to start a family. I was married at the time, and I'm there's no way I can be a mom. There's no way. I would never see my kid. and I'm going to pay for daycare. Like, that seems dumb. So I didn't want to do that. So I'm like, okay, what else is out there? I wanted to do something that was fulfilling. I always like to help people. So what does that look like? I actually had people in financial services recruiting me heavily for years. Usually people in the car business do well in financial services. So I was being recruited, and I really pushed it off for a while. And then eventually I, had a conversation, and I was like, okay, well, maybe this is something that I can do. And I had to start over. It was 100% starting over. Like, I was making 6 figures when I worked in the car business, and start over from zero, which was a risk. And at the time, my ex-husband was like, hey, you're not happy. You're barely around, like, you work all the hours, like, can't hurt, right, to try it. So I took the risk. I put in my 2 weeks at the dealership, and then I started in financial services, which was a whole nother learning curve, and having to get licenses, and it comes with its own predominantly male industry quirks and toxicity as well, just working in that type of environment. I didn't know that, obviously.
Yes. So you did it. How many years? Well, you're still licensed.
Yeah. So I'm still in financial services to a degree. So I'm still brokered with Guardian Insurance Company. I'm not affiliated with the firm anymore. So I've been in for about almost 6 years.
Okay. And you like the interaction with people. I get the impression that, and this is one of the commonalities that you and I have, is that being out there and building our skill sets, and by doing that, we see new opportunities. And with new opportunities, we also see things that we can improve upon out in our community. And I feel like, and we're going to talk about what you're doing right now, which I feel is one of those opportunities that you saw a really need for. But if you hadn't been in the automobile industry, if you hadn't gone into financial advising, which I think you probably saw it even more so there, you wouldn't have gotten to where you are right now, and seeing what that need is and trying to help. Once you figured it out, you cracked the code and you figured out how to fix it. Now you're trying to get other people to understand it isn't as difficult to do this. But in between that, so you did some financial advising, but where does the whole Medicare consultant come in then? Was that after?
No, that was
during.
That was during. So there was a woman that did health insurance out of the office that I worked at, and she also does Medicare. So Medicare is specific for people 65 and over. That was not my client base, but I felt that it made sense to just have the certification. I didn't have to relicense or anything. It's just certification, just take tests to be licensed with Medicare carriers. And because my clients have parents and grandparents, I'm like, seems to make sense if they trust me, and I can say, hey, listen, I handle Medicare. If your parents have any questions, or, would they want to change carriers, I get paid the same regardless of what carrier they go to. You know what I mean? Like, it's one flat rate. It's super easy. There's a lot of people going into it every day. So, and a lot of people aren't doing it. Like, a lot of advisors I think they either don't know what's available, or they just don't want to deal with it. And I'm like, it's so easy though. Like, it's not hard to just say, hey, here's the difference between the United Healthcare and Humana this year.
But that's a huge need, because until you need it, until you get close to that age, you don't think about it, you don't worry about it, and then you get thrown into it. And there's all these regulations that you got to do things 6 months ahead, and you just, you're like, what? And I think, what, one of the pieces that bothers me the most, and I'm in a lucky position because I'm actually older than my husband, but for most women who marry younger, I mean, their husbands are older than them most of the time. Their husbands go off onto Medicare, and, they're covered, but the wife, and if there's kids who aren't 65 yet, they're like, what do I do? Where do I get insurance? And how much is it going to cost? And where did that come from? And I didn't know about this. So, like, there's just all these little pitfalls that most people just, don't even know that it's out there and that there's a problem. So having that experience and that skill set is huge, because everybody is going to knock on that door.
They're gonna need it at some point. And again, it's not a focus, but I was like, you know what? it doesn't take a lot of time. Well, I mean, I say it doesn't take a lot of time, but when I have to research
Well, for you,
certify every year, I'm like, oh. But other than that, I'm like, hey, I have it in my back pocket. I'll recertify every year. At the end of the day, it doesn't take me a lot of time. It isn't a focus. I don't really talk about it, promote it. But if somebody's like,
helps.
hey, yeah, exactly. I have this need. And, when I moved to financial services originally, and I left the dealership, I was like, I want to make sure that I'm not in a toxic place, which that didn't work out. But the other side was I wanted to be a resource. I wanted to build myself as a reputable person, not in one specific thing or another. I wanted to be that resource in the community so that people know that if they contacted me, not only did I have knowledge in areas that probably some people didn't necessarily have, but I had access to things that I know other people do not have.
Yeah. And you become so much more valuable in doing that and in getting all these, just certificates or knowledge or skill set. It makes you, and then, we'll talk about this in a minute, but for networking purposes, you can talk on so many different topics that you probably haven't met somebody that you couldn't talk to about something because of your life. So, okay. So we're going to take a small break. We're going to play a little game. It's get to the point. I'm going to ask you random questions, and whatever pops in your head, you just throw it out there. Are you ready?
Okay.
All right. So virtual or in-person networking events?
In person.
Okay. Social media of choice?
LinkedIn.
One cool fact about you?
Part of my face doesn't move.
That's very interesting. Okay. What movie streaming platform do you like the most?
Probably Netflix.
Okay. Who has made the most positive impact on you in networking? Has there been somebody out there that just you really remember that it's really wowed you?
Like one particular person.
And you don't have to give me their name, but do you remember the situation or anything?
I would say it's like blips of things that have happened. So, changing of perspective where other people feel the same things that you do when you go to an event and it's terrible and you feel awkward and you're like, I don't know how to do this. Somebody that we did workshops together all the time, and he said, well, here's what I would do. He's like, I would go up to another person who looked like they were feeling the same thing. I'd be like, this seems terrible, right? And then just started jumping into a conversation. I'm like, oh, that's so great. I'm going to totally use that.
That's very helpful, because I get a lot of students who will have their first networking event with me, so that I try to make them, more comfortable at doing it. And I will, and usually, without COVID, it was in person, and I would walk around the outer rim of the room, and I would catch students just kind of looking like they just wanted to jump in, but just didn't know how to. And so I would just take them and then just say, oh, I want to introduce you to, and then once I do, just walk away. But yes, you can tell when someone feels that uncomfortableness, and it's easy to see when it's in person, at least. Books or music?
Music.
Favorite place that you've traveled?
Probably Alaska.
Ooh, okay. Choice of beverage?
Like, does it alcohol?
It doesn't have to be any either or. Yeah, it can be if you want to.
I mean, I guess my go-to beverage is typically water. I'm pretty boring in that sense, but even like if I'm drinking, it's not crazy anymore. I like a White Claw is fine.
Okay.
I like white girl stuff is fine.
Okay, phone call or email?
I don't mind. I don't care about either. Like, it depends on what I'm trying to do. Like, if I need to get to you really fast, I know an email is probably going to be faster, but if I want to have a more descriptive conversation, phone call is always better.
Okay. Favorite food?
Tacos.
Well, you didn't have to stop to think about that one.
No.
Okay. And which is more difficult, networking or raising a 3-year-old?
Probably raising a 3-year-old.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I needed. Okay. So now we're going to get back to the regular questions, and really I want to focus on what you have been doing and what you co-founded. We were talking earlier about networking, and I think that it's something that people a lot in their jobs have to do. It's
Mhm.
not something that most people enjoy doing.
No.
But you saw that need, you saw, I guess back maybe in the automobile industry, maybe really in financing, the need to use networking to help your business. But what I think that you saw wasn't working. It was a method of networking that just, I think they say you have to make so many contacts, you have to call somebody 7 times before they'll even, maybe answer the
Mhm.
phone. But that's not genuine. It's not
No.
intentional.
Mhm.
And most of all, it's not sincere.
Right.
And I think that we all know on the other side, the flip side of it, when we get an email or we get a connection from LinkedIn, you can really read into those connections and you can tell which ones really are genuine and others that are sales pitches. And you know that if you hit that connect button, they're going to pass you a message super fast saying,
Yeah.
oh, you know what? I've looked at your website and I really could fix it for you. Or, any of those phrases that just get thrown back at you as soon as you accept their intention. So I think that that's kind of what you were looking at. So can you give us a little bit of an idea of ripple effects? And do I say that correctly? Because
Yep.
it's
Yep.
okay.
Ripple effect. So it's spelled weird, but it sounds like a ripple
Effect.
effect.
That's what I thought.
Into a pond. Yeah.
So tell us the story. Like, how did it originate? And what is it?
So ripple effects started ironically right before pandemic. We were an only in-person networking group, and obviously that changed, when pandemic happened.
Yep.
I've been running strategic networking groups since I got into financial services, and I started doing that for somebody else. It was, just something to try and get me business, essentially, right? And then it turned into a lot more than that. I've tried leads groups. I've been a part of chambers. I've been in BNI. I've been in associations. And one of the things I kept finding over and over again is, aside from the word vomit all the time, is being in the financial space. No one wanted to have a conversation with me. No one would take the time to get to know me. It was a no, just because of what was on my name tag. And I'm like, well, this sucks, because I am way more than just the fact that I work for a financial firm, company, whatever. And I'm like, so why is this happening? Well, previous behavior, right? Most advisors, unfortunately, sorry to all of them out there, but they're not great at networking, and it's not just them, it's everybody. As soon as people put their professional hats on, they lose their minds. Everyone actually is a phenomenal networker when it comes to friends, when it comes to, personal relationships, marriage, spouse, like, we all can do it, obviously, but as soon as we need to sell or, brand ourselves, we lose our minds. We don't know how to do it in a way that's not a sleazy car salesperson. And no one's really having those conversations, I've found. It's everything networking is very old school. It's, well, this is how we did it 30 years ago. So let me just hand you my card and shake your hand and we're good to go. And I'm like, but that's not enough. Like, I'm not just going to give you, like, I hate when somebody sends me a message and they're like, hey, do you have any referrals for me? And I'm like, you just sent me a DM for the first time. I've never met you before. Why would I send you any type of referral? Like, no offense, like, unless you're doing something that no one else is doing, why would I have a reason to go out of my way to find somebody for you? Right. And there's this other, thing, like, people only want referrals. I'm like, why do you want just a referral? Let me ask you this. Why do you want a referral? A referral is one person, one. It could be a company, it could be a whale, right? We're all trying to get the whale, but let's be real here. Why aren't you going after the introductions? Why aren't you going after the people who are going to be a constant funnel for you? Like, why wouldn't you do that? And, when you ask that to people, they're like, I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know I should do that. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's actually being an intentional networker. You're building your community. You're also leading with advocacy. You're having conversations with people, not just because they could be a potential client, but because there might be an opportunity to either collaborate with future clients. They're going to provide value for your clients, which is always going to raise you up in the bar of who they're going to work with. Mm-hmm. And it just leads to way more opportunity. So working for this other company and leading these other groups, I started to realize, like, I think we really can do more here. And my partner Jürgen and I, we kind of, we got together before, it was in 2019, and we started kind of planning out, could we do this? Is this something that would make sense? How long is it going to take? Obviously we don't have any idea of how long it takes to, to build it to however many thousands of members we could get to, right? And it took a while to kind of put things together, and it's constantly changing all the time because of, what people need or what they want. But I wanted to make sure that our brand also was very clear on what it is that networking should be. And the name ripIEFX is derived from the thought that I believe should happen when you're actually networking. So you're in a pond and there's a drop of water, which is you, and that drop leaves ripples, right?
Mhm.
But it only goes out so far, because if you don't continue the drop, it stops. Now, if you add somebody else, now the opportunity for those ripples to collide happens. And when collision happens, that's where open doors happen. That's where relationships get built. That's how trust happens. That's actually how business does happen. But it's not just them. Like, you need them to open doors so you can have access to people that you would not have otherwise had access to. And the more people you have dripping into your pond now, if you are very clear on your messaging, who you work with, what you solve for, who your clients are. Now think about this, if you're looking at like a trajectory of those open doors, if they're all lined up and you get to the other side of the pond and other people are talking about you on the other side of the pond, exactly what it is that you do, what could that look like for your business? That is the ripple effect of intentional networking. And that is what we're trying to change. Don't want to take people away from what they're already doing, but you should add this to what you are currently doing. You need to be in groups that are talking about things other than just leads. It's not just about leads. We all need business, but you also need to make sure business is not just coming today, it's coming 6 months from now. It's coming 2 years from now. People aren't thinking about that. They're like, I just need to get all this stuff done right now. And then they stop networking, which I find, I'm like, they're like, oh, I'm really busy. I'm really overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, that's a time management issue. Like, you should be networking. It is something, it is just like being on a diet. It is just like exercising. You cannot do it once or for a temporary amount of time and then stop doing it and expect to still have the same results. It just doesn't work that way. It is a maintenance vehicle that is constantly required. I don't care what business you're in. I don't care if you're a stay-at-home mom. You need to network, because you have no idea the leverage of having a support network behind you and resources behind you that you would not otherwise have access to, because you're not exposed to them. Other
Right.
people have life experience that you don't have, skills that you don't have, connections that you don't have. And we all know that there's that 6 degree of separation. So if we start having better conversations about what it is that we do, we are clearer when we do our little pitch, which we can have a whole conversation about that. And other people are talking about you. Are you going to have to make 50 phone calls a day to people who may or may not pick up the phone? Are you going to have to run around with your head cut off every single month and feeling like you have to start over because your funnel isn't full all the time? No, you're not. You will never not have people to talk to at that point. You will always have new people in front of you. If you have people constantly sending people your way, it will always happen. And literally, I have proved that myself. Being a financial advisor, when I started doing this method myself, I had a completely 180 degree difference within my practice. And since probably late 2016 up until now, I averaged 20 to 25 meetings a week. And that never stopped during pandemic. I have since gone back a little bit because that's crazy pants. Like, if you had 20 to 25 meetings a week, but like, just to give you an idea of like the possibility, if you were able to be better at just that, those pieces, how you're reflecting your brand, how you're building your brand reputation, how do other people recognize your brand? How do other people understand? Do they actually know what you do? You might say, but what are they actually hearing?
Right.
And has anyone ever taught you how to do that better? Can you go to events better? Yes. Can you go to other networking groups better? Yes. You know, you are going to also talk differently through social media. You're going to talk different in videos, in podcasts. Anything else that you do is going to be better because you have all of those foundational pieces in place. So we want to be that little additional puzzle piece that you need to be successful as a business professional. We don't want you to be we don't want to be the only ones you go to. You need to be in other things because that's how you continue expanding those doors. But we want you to feel that you have the support. So if you're in groups that don't support you because of the type of business that you're in, because of what your personal life is like, whatever the situation is, I want to make sure those people feel very supported and a part of a bigger community. We offer events, we do one-to-one coaching, we do education, we do workshops. We're constantly changing stuff all the time to really try and fine tune how we really serve our members. And then the big thing, obviously, the networking groups. So people can join those and be a part of that and really be a part of a community. And we're not looking to grow 1,000 members overnight. Like, I'd rather have a really core group of people.
Intentional.
And continue. And that's a constant, how do we attract the right type of people, and how do we make sure people are retained and they continue bringing people in, right? And we're not that old, so it's still a constant. It's still constant looking at that stuff. But that's what the vision is to really be. We're not trying to replace BNI. We're not trying to replace the leads group, but we're trying to say, listen, if you're going to still do those things, well, how about you ask different questions? How about you tell people a little bit differently about what you think you do is not perceived the same way as how you say them. We mostly speak doctor. And what I mean by that is people speak the language of what they're passionate about, but that doesn't always translate to people who are unfamiliar with that line of work. And that's a problem, because if you don't emotionally resonate with somebody, they're not going to remember you. They're not going to refer you. They're not going to introduce you. I don't care what you ask. I don't care what incentive there is. They're not going to do it.
They won't remember your name.
No, they won't. And, I always joke, I'm like, oh, my hair is purple. You can't really see it through the video right now, but I always joke with people, and like, I'm 5'11" without heels on. So like, if I'm in a room with somebody, it sometimes can be helpful to, have that memory because of those features. But in the world of pandemic, when we've gone virtual, like, how are you separating yourself? How are you having these better conversations? And, if you are not thinking about those opportunities of the people that you're meeting and the events that you're going to, whether in person or virtual, I don't care what business you have. I don't care if you're selling gold, whatever. Like, it's going to be a challenge for you to be successful and to build up that referred based business. Like, it's going to take you way longer. You hear about those business owners who've been doing this for 25 years. And they're like, well, I'm only referral based. And I'm like, how long did it take you to get there though?
Yeah. 25 years.
Like, building a business, the hardest thing is finding clients. That's the biggest thing that everyone has an issue with. There's all this other stuff we got to do too, which is also a problem because half the time we don't know what we're doing. But take that out for a second. Okay, well, none of those things you can pay for if you don't have people to pay for your service or product. So what better way to do that? Like, you need to market, you need to advertise, because that's how you stay front of mind. But if your front of mind actions are not clear, and we all know word of mouth is the most powerful way to market and promote your business. But if what is being discussed is not accurate, is not positive,
right,
you are going to be on a fast track to being out of a business.
Yep. And there's so many things that you just said. One of them in the very beginning was how you can't just stop once you start getting clients, just stop your networking because, it will then dry up. It's the same thing that I tell students, that when they get out and they get their first job, they have to start their LinkedIn profile. They have to start getting involved and start looking as though they're the expert in what they're doing. But when they get that first job, don't stop, because they will either get tired of their job, they will want to change their career, they will want to do something in the future, and they will have to start all over again, that whole process. And that takes so much more time. So you have to keep that going and be very intentional. So that was one thing. If someone is interested, they're hearing this and they're interested in learning more about it or finding out, wanting to experience it, can someone join one of these meetings and just see for themselves what it's like?
Yep. So I really encourage people before they decide to officially join and be a paying member that they actually check out one of the groups. So we have groups running Monday through Friday. Obviously, we're based out of upstate New York, so a lot of the groups are with local people, but we have people that are outside of New York and outside of the East Coast even. So that could potentially be something that might be of interest. If you can do business anywhere, well, you really need to be networking with individuals on a regular basis in those different areas. They can also participate in events. So if they want to check out what an event is like, right, currently for the month of June, we have roundtables on Mondays. So they're just really an hour sessions to go over a specific topic. Sometimes we have a speaker that comes in, just added resources. Like last week, we talked about, how to really financially plan to a degree within your practice. Like, are you saving enough money? How are you, like, when do you hire a CPA versus an accountant? When do you, turn on payroll? Like, what are some indicators that you're spending too much? Like, just things to consider that, definitely apply personally, but no one's having these discussions either, which is mind blowing to me. Like, business owners aren't working with an advisor to get them ramped up. They're like, well, I can't go to an advisor until I have all these things figured out. And I'm like, no, you're supposed to go to them to help you figure these things out. Or if you should, get rid of your 401k to invest in your business, like, that's not something you should be doing. However, you talk to a financial professional or coach or somebody to get that third party external, person to say like, oh, hey, let's weigh all it out. Let's look at the pros, look at the cons. Let's talk about things you haven't considered because you're involved.
Yeah.
But these people can help with that. So yeah, people can absolutely test it. We actually have a pop-up event today. I know this isn't going to go out, before that happens. But we have a pop-up event, and that's going to be happening more. So we're going to be having pop-up events minimally once a month. So there'll be probably a pop-up, and then I'm probably going to start doing my wine and games speed networking again, which a lot of people know me for. I had a pretty big following with that before, because I did it for quite a few years before pandemic happened, obviously, and so probably get back to doing that. So it'd be like a ripIEFX combined, but still like a public facing event. So people that maybe are not necessarily ripIEFX members can participate and kind of check out and see what some things are like.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, super fun.
So is this considered a membership? Do they pay a monthly fee, or how is that how that works?
Yep. So ripIEFX is membership based, unless somebody hires us for for coaching or something, which that's just a flat fee, unless there's something else that they have in mind. But currently that's just how it is. There's 3 different membership options currently. So there's an events membership, so it just gives you access to education workshops, in person or virtual events. That's $10 a month. And then we have the Recon membership, which gives you access to events and the networking group. So you can be in up to 3 with your membership. It's $34.99 a month. And then the step above that is includes everything else. And then it also includes Insight Path. So the CEO, Terry Nalrot from Insight Path, we have a strategic partnership with them. So people can actually be organized with their networking. So rather than use a spreadsheet, so it wasn't intentional to be a CRM, but there's some components that they have that allows us to, use it for that, for people who are interested. It also has a scheduling tool in it. People can use it for sales funnels too. So if they don't really have a CRM that they really like, it wasn't based off of that, but they have these really cool components, and it's cheaper to do it that way than it is to, you have Calendly. You usually have to have a couple other things too, but it includes the ripIEFX membership as well, and that's only $49.99 a month.
I was going to ask you how you keep track if you're having 20 meetings a week and you're meeting all these different people.
Yeah.
I can't imagine over the last 6 years how many meetings you've had and how many people. I mean, you recently in the last 6 months or so had forwarded me an invitation to talk with somebody in New Zealand. And so that was a really interesting conversation that I had with her. I would never have, known her or that. And I thought that was, and then I connected her with Grow Buffalo, which is a new group in Buffalo that started. And so that, that kind of took off. But then I started thinking, how do you keep track of what everybody is actually doing, who they are? I'm sure you put in there their extra interests, the things that they do, so that you can remember what, it's not just their title, it's not just, what their job is, but all the extra stuff, because that you pull more towards all of those things than sometimes you do with what they're actually doing today because of the resources or skill set.
So there's no one method to my madness. There hasn't really been anything that's fit what I have envisioned, right? So a lot of it is based off of how the relationship is. So networking is a two-way street, just like any relationship. So when I meet somebody and I'm trying to figure out, are they going to be on the top 20% of my networking pyramid or my community pyramid, or are they going to be at the bottom? And most of the time I have no idea. You have a general idea of, maybe where someone might fit, but not everybody's at the top. And even if you have 100,000 connections, you're not talking with all of them at the same time. You're not talking with all of them consistently. So, the people that stay front of mind are the people that make an effort. They communicate, they're participating. Whether they're in ripIEFX or not, doesn't matter. They're participating in my life in the sense of, I'm not having to put 100% of the effort in to acknowledge, hey, here's what's going on, or hey, what are you up to, or what, how can I help you, whatever. And then when I was doing events, publicly all the time, not just with ripIEFX, I had everyone saved in whatever platform that I used to send out invitations. So I would clean that up every now and then and send those out so people would be aware. And the same thing with my email, you can build out contact list groups and they can be for specific things. So if people want to be on my event list or, whatever, I'll bring those over. And then that's where sometimes I'll send an email and say, hey guys, here's a bunch of resumes I've gotten this week, or here's a bunch of events if you're trying to figure out what to do with your life this week. Or this month, or I might make an announcement about, maybe something ripIEFX oriented or not at all. Sometimes people use me to get the word out about something. It's a lot of times it's job openings or people looking for jobs or whatever. And I'm like, how am I not a recruiter? But that's not what I want to do. So I'm like, I'm not doing that. But yeah, so that's kind of how it's happened. Because, I have found, especially from working in the car dealership, with how often I was sending out communication. I would say I'm an over communicator to a degree, but the people that I know, people see what I say on LinkedIn because I post daily, if not more. I know people are watching the things that I'm doing, and if people have an inkling to have a conversation, they will reach out. And that's on top of, if I saw somebody pass through my line of vision, sometimes they'll get tagged in a post, or if somebody tags me in a post, that triggers to have a conversation. And I tell people this, I'm like, listen, this is how we stay in contact, because we're crazy busy. It doesn't matter, how often we try to do things always get in the way. But if we're making an effort, we're making the communication, it'll always work out. Just like any relationship, you have friends that you might only talk to once a year, and then you have friends that you talk to on a weekly basis because you're both putting the effort in. So I look at business the same way. And, my go-to people are the ones that make an effort to stay in the circle.
I like that 20%. I have to think of that myself, because you do. And you know what, one thing that COVID has done, I think it's had me reevaluate relationships, whether they're friendship relationships, work relationships, networking relationships. It has given me time to really think about, and I think that I've kind of cut back on all of that. So that's really helpful.
Yeah, well, you realize, like, okay, well, who, and I've had to realize it over time, because I'm like, oh, I want to keep everybody, but I'm like, not everybody's at the same level. Some people will move up, on that pyramid. Some people will come back, they'll circle back, but I just don't want to, go out of my way for the people who aren't. I'm not saying they have to go out of their way for me too, but I'm like, I know I make connections way more than I expect to receive them. And I get a lot back, but it's taken a while to get there. I mean, there was times where I was actually tracking like how many I was getting versus how many were going out. And it was like a 1 to 3. Oh, wow. Like for every one I got, 3 went out.
Yeah, I can see that.
In some cases.
That kind of is like when you have a party and you send out invitations. How many people actually RSVP?
Yeah.
Like it drives you nuts. Like, why can't they just RSVP so you know how much food to get. So, it's just a simple thing. Okay, so at the end of my interview, I always ask people to give 3 pieces of advice. What advice would you give to someone who just hates networking? What will help them look at it differently, turn things around? Because really, to be successful, no matter who you are and what you're doing out there at this moment, whether you're a student, whether you've been out in the workforce for a while, networking really can change the way you interact with people, your community, and how successful you are. So for those people that just dread it, what kind of advice could you give them?
I would say you've been in the wrong place. You've been around the wrong people. I would say that's part of it. I would also look at, how do you actually really feel when you go? So like you say, you hate it, but why? Do you hate it because there's anxiety? Do you hate it because you don't like meeting people? Like it's awkward for you? Do you consider yourself more of an introvert? And I would say, well, you should really try to go to places that maybe are more introvert friendly. So I have specifically built stuff like that because I know that not everybody is an extrovert. I'm actually not an extrovert. I'm more in the middle, depending on the situation. Like if I know I'm presenting, I have to prepare myself to get to that point. I don't do well at events and I don't know anybody because I'm the person that's in the corner. It's very hard for me to go up to people. So that would be what I would say. You need to evaluate like how you really feel and you got to test it out. You have to try different events and you can't give up. Networking is, like I said, it is not, you can't go to the gym and do 100 crunches and be like, I got abs forever. It doesn't work that way. You have to consistently do it. I don't care if you change companies every couple months, like people need to know if you want to do business and you want to be successful, you have to get out there. So maybe do it a different way. Like instead of going to a networking based professional event, if that freaks you out, do community stuff, volunteer. Like that is still networking. So, do things that you're passionate about. Like I actually play volleyball. I play beach volleyball on Mondays. At a restaurant in Malta. I'm actually a vice president of a mom's club in Clifton Park. And so like those are actually other ways to network. So if you have other things that you're passionate about, well, how can you get involved? Is there an association? Is there a club? And there's stuff that you can do that costs $0. So you can do it for minimal amounts of money. And that might, just that practice alone will help you. And then if you get ready where you can do a professional type event, consider the event. Are they doing games? Is it just standing around? Is it at a restaurant? Is it at a bar? Who's going to be there? Can you see the list? Go with somebody, like go with a friend, because then you're more apt to be a little bit more confident because you're not 100% by yourself.
Yes, I totally agree with all of that. I too, I feel like I'm an introvert. I don't really like going to like a dinner where I have to just sit down and kind of be stuck. But if I can bring somebody, or if I know that somebody else is going to go there, it does help. And also I tell my students, every time you go to one, it gets a little bit easier. So the more you do it, the more you find, your niche, you find things that work and you just keep reusing those things. So, well, thank you so much, Christine. I really do appreciate all this time because there's just so many things that we could have talked about. We could have talked about volleyball. I used to play volleyball too. so
next one.
You've got just so many things going on. So thank you so much for talking about this. And if anybody would like to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to connect?
I would say LinkedIn. So I really like when people send me a note about why they're connecting to me. It's actually part of my parameters for connecting with me on LinkedIn. Okay. But if they actually heard this podcast and say, hey, I heard XYZ podcast, I'm interested in having a conversation. I'm more apt to connect for sure, 100%. Or if they just have additional questions, they can just put that within the notes. That's the best way. And, my email is actually readily available on LinkedIn too. So if they want to just directly connect, and they can also reach me through our ripIEFX.us website too.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening to SharpHR Career Corner. If you're looking to make a change in your job, but you aren't sure where to start, contact Sharp Human Resources. We'd love to help you out. We can make the process a smooth transition for you. Go to sharphumresources.us humanresources-buffalo.com for more information. If you enjoy listening to our podcast, I encourage you to download the podcast, leave a comment, and share with others that you know. The more downloads, comments, and likes that we receive, the better our ratings and the easier we can be found. So thank you in advance. Until next time, be kind, everyone. We need to show a lot more kindness in the world, and it starts with you and I. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day.